All right. Well, I am thrilled to be joined by Barry Shiffman, who is the director of the Banff International String Quartet Competition and now the Banff International String Quartet Festival. Barry is in Toronto in the middle of rehearsals, in the middle of preparation, and he was kind enough to take out some time from his busy schedule to join me this morning on CKUA and Classical Connections. So, Barry, good morning to you.
Good morning, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
It's wonderful to have you with us, Barry. Our listeners might recognize your name as a founding member of the celebrated St. Lawrence String Quartet, founded in 1989, which featured also incredible first violinist Jeff Nuttall and a couple of Edmontonians, Leslie Robertson and Marina Hoover. Can you tell me what drew you and the others together into quartet playing? Because it sounds like you guys got started at a time where you could have gone in different directions.
I think it's fair to say for all of us in the quartet, Banff was the inspiration for our interest in chamber music and quartet specifically. Remember, we grew up at a time when the string quartet competition had burst on the scene. So as young kids, we were following the competition every 3 years on CBC. And so that already ignited an interest. And then I think it's fair to say that Jeff Nuttall, who sadly we lost this year, was unbelievably committed and interested and in love with chamber music, and we all shared on that enthusiasm. And so when we were done our schooling, some of us had done master's degrees, some of us had our bachelor's, whatever it was, the idea of coming together and exploring this repertoire was exciting for all of us. And we threw ourselves into it with a kind of blissful naivete, and luckily not looking at any of the reasons why we shouldn't do this, because all the odds are against us. But it was all about, we loved making music together, we loved this music, and I think we all wanted to touch that intensity that we had experienced in summers in Banff. In a way, it's like we're like Peter Pan. We got to continue living as kids,
right?
With that sort of wide-eyed enthusiasm. And I was in it for 18 years, and the quartet continued after I left. And I will say they never lost that craziness that we had as young people.
Wow. Well, it was a combination of that craziness, that passion, that artistry that led to the St. Lawrence String Quartet actually winning the first Canadian quartet to win the competition, the fourth International String Quartet competition. Can you talk to me about why Banff and quartets just seem to go so well together?
Yeah. If you ever have a chance to read Vikram Seth's wonderful novel, An Equal Music, which follows a string quartet as the main feature of the story. And at one point, that quartet goes off to study. And Vikram had done his research. So when they go off to study in his fictitious novel, they go to Banff.
Wow.
And I think that idea of string quartet in Banff goes back to the work of the incredible Tom and Isabel Rolston, who at one point in their multi-decade tenure running that place invited the legendary first violinist Zoltán Zekai, who was the first violinist of the famed Hungarian quartet. This is one of the great chamber ensembles of the 20th century. This is a group that premiered quartets of Bartók, toured all over the world. And at one point when they retired, Tom reached out to Zoltán and offered him the opportunity to come and live at the Banff Center.
Wow.
And so he lived the end of his life at Banff. And because he was there, this Yoda-like figure, great string quartets descended upon Banff to work with him. That was a big part of the history of string quartet in Banff. And then there were many, many, many summers of chamber music programs that Banff ran. And so the string quartet competition was a natural outgrowth of an existing interest in the training of young musicians.
Wow. So Barry, the String Quartet Festival has been in existence now since 2017, happening in the off years of the festival. Can you talk a little bit about where the idea for this came from and what you're excited about this year?
Yeah, thank you. The idea for the festival grew out of the success of the competition. Janice Price had begun working at Banff Center as the president. She attended her first International String Quartet competition, and I think was just blown away by what she saw, the enthusiasm of hundreds and hundreds of people descending upon Banff, and the quality of quartets that we attract. And she asked me, why don't we do a small festival to celebrate our laureates and connect with this audience rather than risk losing them and their interest by waiting another 3 years? Well, it didn't take very long for me to say, sure.
Absolutely.
I'd be happy to curate a string quartet festival weekend in the most beautiful time of the year in Banff, right? You know, around Labor Day,
Yeah.
and off we went. And I think we were both really happy to see how quickly it sold out and how quickly um, our audience did want to come back to Banff, even if it wasn't a competition.
Right.
We're very happy that it has a number of different elements, from a kind of focus on the new generation, but also some of our more senior artists, like the New Orford Quartet,
Yes.
which has, you know, the concertmaster of the Toronto and Montreal symphonies,
Yeah.
like Joel Corrington, our country's greatest ever bass player,
Yeah.
like Gilles von Sattel, who's playing piano and has an enormous career now in the US. Interestingly, I met him when I first started working for Banff as director of music programs when I was living in Banff, and he had just won the Honens competition
Wow.
and was in Banff making his first recording.
Okay.
And then there are some other, I think, special artists that I think are a little unusual. First of all, Anna Stuba, who is, I think, one of Alberta's great violinists. Maybe the one concert that, for me personally, has been most profoundly touching to work on, I just came from rehearsal on it, is our presentation of the Seven Last Words of Christ of Haydn. As you likely know, Aaron, my closest friend in the world, Jeff Nuttall,
Yes.
passed,
Yes.
in November, and he was a unbelievable lover of Haydn. I mean, evangelical in his no, like really, like it's like he could have a church where he just speaks about Haydn. It's incredible.
Wow.
So Haydn wrote this work, The Seven Last Words of Christ, which is an incredibly powerful collection of movements. He made a version for string quartet. And so what we've done with the incredible direction and expertise and thoughtfulness of actor Alon Nashman, we've taken the Seven Last Words of Christ, which will of course be performed as a musical performance, and each of those seven expressions that are attributed to Christ on the cross will then be expounded on through a choice of poetry and lyrics that include, as an example, Margaret Atwood, Amanda Gorman, Paul McCartney, Leonard Cohen, Ann Michaels, Paul Simon, Jane Siberry.
Wow.
So I can't share the specific text, but it's so beautiful. We're not playing that music, but we're reading the text of those artists. I think something quite magical is going to happen in that performance.
Barry, that's amazing. I can't thank you enough. Thanks so much for being my guest this morning on Classical Connections. It's been amazing to hear your passion and to hear everything that's happening in Banff, and I'm so excited for this festival, as I know our listeners will be, as I know all the musicians will be, and on the concert goers. So Barry Shiffman, thank you again for being my guest here on CKUA's Classical Connections.
Thanks, Aaron.